Welcome back to the Working Mumma podcast, where we have honest conversations about what it really looks like to build a career and raise a family at the same time. If you've ever felt like you're getting it wrong, like you're trying to do everything right, but it still doesn't feel like enough, this episode is for you. Because today we're talking about something that so many working mums are quietly carrying, the pressure to be the perfect mum. And what if I told you that's not the problem? It's the expectation. Today I'm joined by Lisa Taylor, family therapist and author of The Perfect Parent Trap. Lisa has spent over 25 years working with families, and in this conversation, she shares why so many parents feel overwhelmed, reactive, and like they're failing, despite doing everything they can. We talk about the invisible pressure modern mums are under, the mental load, the role of our own childhood experiences in how we parent, and why trying to control everything is actually making things harder. But most importantly, Lisa shares a completely different way to approach parenting. One that's less about doing more and more about who you're being. This is a deeply validating and eye-opening conversation, and one that I think every working mum needs to hear. Let's get into it. Welcome, Lisa, to the Working Mumma podcast. How's your day been so far?
Oh, thank you, Karina. It's been amazing, actually. Yep. Had a walk on the beach and went to the gym and then straight into it.
Oh, what a great way to start a Monday.
Yep.
So I'm going to actually start the podcast today a little bit differently to what I usually would. And so before we dive in, if a mum is listening right now and feel like she's getting it all wrong, what would you like her to hear out of today's chat?
It's a beautiful question. I want her to hear that she's not getting this wrong, that we're all caught in this trap of expectation, of comparison, of that kind of idea that we have to control everything and get everything perfect. But we're not. We're human. And this human experience of raising another human is messy. And we get it wrong. We stuff it up. We get it right. We have joy. We have love. We have sadness. All the feelings. So I want your listeners, to know that whatever you're experiencing right now, it's okay, because this is what being human, raising humans feels like.
Yeah, that's such a good validation and good to know. So Lisa, you've been working with families for over 25 years. What are you seeing now in this day and age when it comes to parenting, especially for working mums? Because I'm sure 25 years ago when you first started, it's very different. I'm sure thanks to social media and comparisonitis and things like that come with it. It's very different to what we have as we're recording this in 2026.
Oh, absolutely. I think that parents today are feeling really overwhelmed, feeling really stressed. I think trying to do it all perfectly, because we see on social media so many families, who are doing all these amazing things, and sometimes we can't even get our kids to get their shoes on and get out the door, and it all feels like a real struggle. So, it's something that research tells us very clearly, that a large majority of parents are feeling really overwhelmed, and so overwhelmed that it impacts how they parent and how they respond to their kids. And it's actually the reason I wrote the book, because I was just so frustrated with knowing that statistic, knowing that on the end of that, parents are walking into homes and parenting feeling so overwhelmed. So it really struck a chord with me, and it made me really angry, actually, because I know everyone's trying to do their very best, and there's this pressure.
So where's that overwhelm coming from?
I think it comes from, we've been given lots of behavioural strategies. We've been told that we need to control behaviour, that we should be managing our children and everything around them, that we should be, that we have to get it perfect, and that we have to get it right, and that, we're judged. Parents are judged all the time.
Oh, so much.
Yeah, by the lady in the restaurant who's looking at you when your kids are, fighting, and, there's a lot of judgment. And I think that stress and overwhelm comes because the message that we've been told is that we have to manage behaviour. But I want to bring a different conversation into the world. I want us to talk not so much about managing behavior, but about really looking inside of us and understanding what's happening for us as parents in these moments that feel really big and hard, and moments where we react.
Yeah. And what made you so angry, and what was it about parenting, I guess, in this day and age that inspired you to write your book?
Look, really, I mean, growing my own children up, was a challenge. And I wasn't always a therapist. I was a teacher at one point, and at a time when my kids were 4 and 2, and, my mum had passed away. And so there was a lot of grief and loss, and a lot of me trying to control every single thing that happened. But the real reason that I wrote the book in the end was because I know what it feels like to be a child who didn't feel heard or didn't feel understood. And so when I sit in the room with families and I hear little people say, she doesn't listen, or they might say it's my fault, or I don't know if my mum loves me. When I hear children come and speak about that, it made me feel, I feel really, it's so important that our children know that they're loved, and it's so important that we listen to them, that we are able to be really present for them. And so knowing what that feels like as a child, not being heard, really kind of spurred me on to write something so that we can all, as parents, really understand what it's like to stop and listen to our children and help them to feel loved, but also know that as parents we are loved too, and that we are really important.
Yeah, because there's not so much of, a children obviously shows up of our own childhood experiences, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so obviously, parents are feeling like they're not good enough, that they're failing and things like that. But we've had more information and resources than we've ever had. So what can we do as parents, to support our children so they know that they feel loved, that they are worthy, and that they are good enough?
Yeah, look, we have so much information about parenting. It's true. There's that many books. It's crazy. I think the thing is that a lot of it's been focused on the wrong thing. And that's, how do we control the child? How do we fix our children? How do we get them? We kind of have the power, and the children are just, going to do what we say. But it's really, we can't control anybody. We really have no control over another person. The only thing that we can control is ourselves. So, I think this might be going a little bit off track, but I think the overwhelm too today is that parents are so busy working. Like they're doing 3 shifts essentially. There's the morning shift of getting kids ready for breakfast, shoes on, clothes on, looking half decent, getting out the door. Then there's the work shift. Yep. And then there's the after work shift. There's we get home, and then it kind of all, there's the whole thing that happens there. And so it's a really busy time. Parents are just, I think there's a lot on and a lot of expectation. And when parents' nervous systems are really kind of heightened, so when they're feeling overwhelmed and anxious and, trying to get everything sort of done, our children feel that too. And, we're all really connected, and family therapy kind of differs from psychology in that there's a really strong aspect of how we are all connected in systems theory. So we, whatever, if I'm feeling sad, one of my children will feel or notice that and change their behavior in a way that kind of maybe they'll come to me, maybe they'll move further away knowing that I'm feeling something big. So we're all really connected in a way that we need to kind of consider when we're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, what's it like, what's happening for our children in those moments.
And so what can we do as parents? Because as you say, we're busy. We've also having these little humans, because as you say, little kid, no one can be controlled as much as what we are lived to believe these days, and all the books, as you say, about controlling behaviour. But we can't even control ourselves as adults at times. And then we try and impose that on young children, and also about expectations as well, about the way that they should, I say in inverted commas, I personally think should be a swear word for mum or even working parents. But it's out there as well of all these expectations, and then also then at times we've got stressful roles, they come home, kids are unpredictable. So there's all these elements that come into it that, you know, who we were before we had kids is a very different person because of these unknown factors as now as parents. I know it's a big question, but how can we as parents then, I guess, manage it and manage ourselves? Because obviously our kids are also responding, as you said, to our behaviours and our feelings.
Yeah, it's a big question, but a great question, and it's one that everybody kind of wants to know. What can I do? And I suppose that what I'm trying to do is to change the narrative around this. Change it because it's actually not about what are you doing; it's about who are you being. And so, yes, I get that we have these moments that are really high pressure, and there's a lot of reaction, and kids' needs outweigh our needs in those moments. So it's a bit of both, and it's about having the courage, really. And courage is sort of one of the key elements that I talk about in the book, and that's having the courage to, yes, you may have stuffed it up. Yes, you may have said some things that were unhelpful to your child, but in those, even after those moments, to kind of come back and go, because we all think about those moments, right? The times that you said, something really awful to your child, or you did something, or
yeah,
you
we've all been there.
Yeah, and so we still think about them. Like later on when you're lying in bed, you're like, oh God, I really stuffed that up. And so, what I'm inviting people to do is to, rather than kind of think about it and feel guilty about it, is to actually kind of start to have some awareness and some to think about, where did that come from? What is that I'm feeling in that moment? So, for example, when your child didn't listen to you, sometimes that feeling that you have isn't really about your child ignoring you. That's actually an old imprint, if you like, from when we were parented. So perhaps when you weren't listened to. So I call them heart prints, but they're these imprints that we have on our heart from when we were hurt as a child, and they come up under moments of stress. They show up as well. So it's not just the adult in the room, if you like. It's the adult with this little hurt heart print that then reacts to the child in front of us.
So what can we do in those situations that there may have been some triggering points? As you say, put your clothes on if you haven't done it maybe the fourth, fifth time. And then I know that sometimes you just explode and like, come on, put your shoes on, we've got to get going, and things like that. And then we go back after going, should I really have said it in that tone maybe, and things. How do we manage, I guess, ourselves in those situations? As you said, we've got those handprints on our heart from our own childhood impacting and influencing how we parent and show up today.
So one of the things that I encourage is, because often we feel it in our body before we even say anything. So, those moments where it's sort of high pressure and, kids aren't listening, or you're looking at your watch. So there's often a feeling in your own body of a tightness in your chest, or, you might have stopped breathing, those kind of things. But what's really important is to actually, what I call the courage pause, and that's to stop, to even take a breath, just to take a breath, or even just to say, I need a breath, I'm going to walk outside for a minute, and just be able to kind of really breathe and just be curious about what's happening inside of me. So sometimes, it's good to ask the question, am I responding to the child in front of me or reacting to the child within me?
And how do you then manage your reaction to those two different scenarios?
So, coming back and even saying to your child, actually, mummy's feeling really overwhelmed right now. I'm going to take a breath, maybe go out, or even say to your child, mummy's feeling really, because often what happens is we don't actually share with our children what's happening in the moment. We kind of do the directing. We do the, get your shoes on, get this. We don't actually sit down and say, do you know what? Mummy's got a really busy day today and we need to be in the car, and the time is getting, it's going by really quickly. I'm wondering how you could help me with that, because it's a big problem at the moment. And, generally, children want to help, they want to support, and they want to do the right thing by their parents. So even asking them, letting them know what's happening in the moment.
Yeah, because it's so much, I know at times it can show up of our frustration or turn into a yell, as opposed to, no, I've actually, as you say, take the children along the ride for you and explaining how you're actually feeling.
Yeah. And, one of the big things is that behavior is like, it's just communication. It's just telling us something. Like we need to clue into it and sort of go, okay, well, this child is, they're not getting their shoes on. In fact, they're having a tantrum or they've gotten back into bed or something. So what's going on with the child? So we have to, look at what their behavior is and think about, well, what is their need in that moment? So all behavior equals a need. So what's the child's need? What's my need? My need is I'm going to be late for work and I'm finding that really stressful. So I need to be able to share that in a way that's not going to make people dig in, but get them to help support me in that. And so I suppose even having conversations before the actual day about tomorrow is a really super busy day. What can we do to get organised before we even walk out the door tomorrow? Or I wonder how you could help me get to my meeting. I'm going to talk to this person tomorrow and they're, really important. So really kind of giving children the story around what's actually happening for you and inviting them into those moments so they can understand what needs to happen and why.
Yeah. And how do you at times work out what that child's need is? Because sometimes, I know I've had my own personal experience with my eldest son. He cracked it one day around bath time because my husband had said something and then he lost it. But it wasn't until he'd calm back down again and then we were having a chat. Turns out it was a laddering up from actually a circumstance that had happened back in school earlier in the day. It's been another situation, and then it ended up being, it all just blew up. So it was really interesting having a chat with him. He goes, but no, there was this thing in the playground and this impacted this. But his need, it wasn't until I'd undone the onion of emotions did I actually understand what was really going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that story. It's really important, I suppose, when we are home that we are present. And that's obviously it's the best gift we can give our children anywhere. But even noticing, it might be the way they carried their bag or it might be the way they threw the bag down when they got in. So all this is information. And a lot of times we are so busy as mums and dads, but that we're, busy doing stuff that we miss the kind of cues that cue us into something's not right. And so often if we keep thinking about behavior equals a need, both theirs and ours, what's the behavior telling us? And the iceberg where we see the behavior above the top of the iceberg, but underneath there's a whole bunch of feelings.
So much going on.
I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm frustrated, I'm embarrassed. All of the feelings that children have, that all the feelings that we have, right? Because when we're yelling at our kids, often it's because we're feeling frustrated, hurt, sad, overwhelmed. All the feelings. And often, when there is a big kind of blow up between parents, it's because everyone's feeling the same feeling, but we often just focus on behavior and on fixing it or shutting it down. And when we do, like when we react, what happens is that we're actually responding from fear.
Mm-hmm.
So fear that if I let this get out any more out of control, I won't be able to shut it down, or fear that I'm going to be late, or fear, there's a fear base that kind of happens when we're trying to control things. So the invitation in the book really is to think about, rather than parenting from fear, is parenting from love. And what that looks like is being vulnerable. So sharing what you're feeling, how you're feeling when you've stuffed things up. Like, you know what, I really want to acknowledge that I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. And I apologize. So that, yeah, I think the vulnerability part of it, has us sharing with kids a little more around what's happening for us, because we're human. And when we can share with kids that sometimes life's hard and tricky and sometimes we take on too much because, we're trying to be perfect parents, that's the real key, I think, is sharing, being vulnerable in that space rather than trying to control and manage everything, including behavior.
Is that a real shift, I guess, parenting today to even 20, 30, 50 years ago? Whereas, 50 years ago, we would never have thought, there'd be no parents sharing their vulnerability with their children. Probably even, it's the whole saying, seen but not heard type element. Whereas these days, being a lot more open and honest, even around the kitchen table and things like that about how you're feeling. I know my younger son goes to kinder and they use like the different colours to actually represent their feelings, which I found actually quite useful to also then name actually how they're going. And is it something that I know, because I know some people may think being vulnerable with your children may actually be a sign of weakness, but it's probably not. It's actually a strength, isn't it?
Oh, it's such a strength. It's actually like connection is the biggest need that we have as humans. And when we share with someone how we're feeling, what we give them is the permission to share too. So you're right though, like, even 30 odd years ago when I was growing up, it wasn't I grew up on a farm and I was a really emotional and sensitive little girl. And so I cried a lot when things died and, I had my animal friends, but, I was told to, stop crying, you're weak, just move on. What are you upset about? How are you ever going to get on? But it's also, and what I know now is that sensitivity is my superpower in being able to sit with people and really hear what's not being said. So, it has, parenting has changed a lot. It's evolved a lot. And I think the focus now is more on the relationship rather than just I'm the parent and you're the child. So, I grew up with a lot of power where you just did what your parents said. Maybe you got a smack on the bum if you didn't, or they took something away. So there was a real power imbalance where the adults had all the power and children had none, essentially. And sometimes we still parent like that, like we still take things away and have consequences at times for, when a child does something. And I certainly believe in boundaries. But when we become bigger than our children, they feel it, and that is often because we're parenting from fear, that I'm big, you do what I say, I'm in control, I'm in charge. And what that does is that damages relationships. So we want to parent in a way that is respectful of the relationship, that we are equals, and I know that's going to be controversial for some people, but what I mean by that is that you matter as much as I matter in the relationship.
No matter how old you are, they've still got feelings and things like that need to be considered because, the first 5-7 years, they're such little sponges of the way they're growing and developing, not just physically, but certainly emotionally, and also what they're seen and the way they're spoken to, no doubt has a huge influence then for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely. And when children are spoken to in a way that is respectful of them as individuals, then that's what they give to others, and that's what they give back to you as well.
Yeah. And so what can we do, as working mums that we feel like, we're juggling careers, childcare, the mental load and everything else like that, and we feel like we're trying to fall into this perfect parenting trap? What are some signs that we might be in that trap? And then what can we do to get out of it?
Yeah, good question. So there's the signs really that we're in that trap are that we are reactive, that we're overwhelmed, that there's a lot of fear around what if happens, or I should, that word that you don't like. And so, yeah, we often and what happens when people feeling those things is that they want to tighten things. So they want to control more things. There's less kind of wiggle room for spontaneity and play and things like that. So, the trap is that we just focus on behavior and we miss everything else that's kind of happening. And so, what was the other part of that question?
What can we do to get out of it?
Yeah, good. So to get out of that again, it's just about awareness. It's about noticing what's happening for you internally. So what's happening for you as a parent when you're feeling overwhelmed? What else is going on? Because often it's not just about the child's behavior. Often it might be like your son, maybe at work you were ignored, or maybe there's a pressure happening at work that you are feeling like you're not doing it good enough, and that might actually be pressing on a little heartprint of not being enough. And so when you hear your child say, well, you're the worst mum ever, and you've got someone at work saying, oh, you need to, your work's kind of been a little bit, maybe less or something, then we feel it in our hearts, in his heart print. So it's kind of like a bruise, that gets pressed again and again and again. And so when we react and respond from that, that's when we know we're certainly in a trap of just having focused on behavior and not recognizing what's actually going on inside of us.
And what can we do? So if we are just like listening to today's episode going, oh my goodness, I feel this and I recognize it. What are some strategies and tips that we can start doing today? Because I know we're not going to necessarily be perfect, never perfect, but, we can good enough, I would say, going forward. What can we do going, what I really resonate with this? What's something they could do today?
So, the biggest thing is just be curious. If you can be curious about what's happening for yourself and even asking yourself, what's this really about inside of me? Then I think that's one thing that you can do. Remembering that when you are reacting, when there's something that's going on inside of you, that's your responsibility to kind of notice and be curious and ask yourself the question, is this what's happening for me internally? Is this a reminder of something old or something from my own childhood? And what do I need right now? So what do I need as a parent, but also noticing what's happening for your child. And, we have to tend to our children's needs as well. And in the moment, it might be their need might be bigger than yours, but coming back and even reflecting at another time and kind of going, well, what was that really about? There's three kind of core fears that we all have. One of them is that I'm not lovable, that I don't belong, and that I'm not enough. And often a heart print will be of one of those will get pressed in moments where I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed or when I'm really reactive. So just doing some checking in on those things.
And there's certainly big emotions as well that I know many mums and working mums as well feel, particularly, not being good enough. Can I be loved? And really, who am I? And things like that. They're definitely emotions that I know all mums have felt at different stages, particularly, say, if you're returning back into work, of am I good enough? And then you can definitely, probably lash out at times of like, well, if you're not saying I'm good enough and then your kids aren't doing well, and it just feels like one big hot mess.
Yeah, I know. And it's real, right? And we're human and we always want to do a good job. We're always trying to do the very best that we can. It doesn't matter whether it's at work or at home. That's something that innately we try and do. I think it's important that we make this shift from when we see our children doing something or behaving in a way that we don't like, is that rather than asking, what's wrong with my child or, why are they behaving like that, is that we actually flip it and we ask, well, what's being stirred in me right now? What's happening inside of me and what do I need?
And if we're recognizing that in ourselves, how do we then also work with our children to help them see maybe what there might have been a circumstance or something like that, to then recognize their emotions also then probably then with their behavior? I guess it's, as you say, their behavior, but they've probably then got an underlying need.
Yeah, it's really good. So you do noticing, like I notice you've got a sad look on your face, or I notice that you slammed your bag down there, honey. What's happening for you right now? Or I'm wondering how school was today, or I'm wondering you don't feel like getting your shoes on this morning. What's happening?
So just trying to
really doing some noticing. It's actually listening. Like when you're doing that, you're just cueing in and listening. So what you're looking for are the cues. What are the cues and clues of really what's going on for your child in the moment?
Yeah, I know in my family, we've started doing the high-low buffalo, like the dinner time. It'll be, I always say, like, what was the best part of your day? Because often with kids, they'll always say good. And I'm like, but what was the best part? And then they'll say this and that. And I said, well, was there any lows? And they're like, oh, well, this wasn't great. And it brings about a whole different circumstance, but it also shows at times what their needs are or even what their priorities have been. So if you're like, well, their behaviour's a bit off, they're acting a bit tired, I'm like, okay, right, there's this thing that happened at school that probably might be the reason.
Yeah, I love that. And really, we want to listen in because we're not mind readers and they're not either. Like we've got to remember that kids actually don't know that we have to get to work on time because we've got a meeting after meeting after, we have to kind of share with them what's happening for us. But Yeah, and I think it's really important for us to take the time, like you said, to talk about feelings and to, when we ask them, what was a low, and they say, oh, such and such hit me at school and it really hurt my feelings, to then kind of even dig into that a little bit more and say, well, what were your feelings in that moment? And sometimes even, and what did you make it mean? Because sometimes we react in ways that, we have a reaction, but the reaction is because of we've made some meaning out of something. So when your child, for me, it's listening. So as a child, I know what it feels like to not be listened to. I have a heart print that when someone's not listening to me, it gets prickled really quickly. So when my children don't listen, it's like I could go straight into a rage, of, my God, you're not listening.
Yeah.
Now I know better. So I have to really check that for myself and just notice what are the really prickly bits for me that make me react to my children in a way that is not really about them. It's about me.
How did you go through that process to recognize what those heart prints were? Because I'm sure for some people it might be obvious, others there might be regular trigger points, but they're actually not probably necessarily joining the dots together. How did you go through and go, all right, I wasn't listened to as a child, and then that's then a real trigger point and heart print for yourself?
Yeah, lots of learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I had 2 children at the time. We've got 3 now, but I had a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my mum just passed away, and I was in all sorts of grief and loss and trying to control everything. So I had the weekly rotational, 3-week rotational menu and shopping lists, and the house was spotless, and I was trying to do some work as well and just trying to do too much. And I remember one night, and I talk about this in the book, the kids were, crying and wanting things from me that I just was gone. I just didn't have it. I remember grabbing the phone book. That's how old I am. But I'm grabbing the phone book and looking for somewhere that I could go, that I could just leave and book myself into a hotel or something for the night, because I don't know really what I thought I was going to do with the children, but I just wanted to escape. And so it was a really low point for me where I just realized that I wasn't being the parent that I really wanted to be. I'm this warm, loving, kind, generous person naturally, but I wasn't being that parent at all. And so I went and got some help, and I really dug deep in, uncovered what it was about me that was really being triggered in those moments. And I dealt with my grief rather than trying to push it down and pretend it wasn't there. So a lot of the questions that are in the book, every chapter has a reflection section, and a lot of that is what I learned, through all of the work that I've done. And going on to study family therapy was amazing, because you have to look at yourself. You have to do the first years pretty much looking at your own family of origin and all the prickly bits that you've inherited, and you have to think about what do you want to keep and what do you want to let go of, and what's yours and what's not yours. And sometimes we are handed down, some sadness or some trauma that passed down through generations. So knowing what was mine and what wasn't mine was really important. And then I suppose learning about what kind of parent I wanted to be and being purposeful about that. So that took a lot of really looking at, well, in moments where I'm not feeling good enough, what do I do? And I reached for control. I reached for blame. And I pushed people away. That was not a healthy way to manage my own hurt and my own stuff.
And how did you then, clearly you've done then quite a flip then on the way that you were parenting when your children were 4 and 2 at that particular stage. Did you then, once you've recognised those behaviours, those heart prints, and then also working through your own grief and I guess not squashing it down but recognising it, what was then the impact on your relationship then afterwards with your children?
Well, I think what happened was that the more vulnerable and real I got about what was happening for me, the more the children kind of came along and supported me in a way. I was able to cry and say, Mummy's feeling really sad now. I miss my mum. And, they would lean in. And what I started to notice happen was that actually what we became closer, but I became braver
Mm.
in the way that I was able to share what was happening. And even when I messed things up and said, some things, or, I didn't get it all perfect, and I'm still not getting it perfect. But I was able to not judge myself in that moment either. Even if, sharing with my children, and even still, we're having really interesting conversations about the book. And my eldest is 25 at the moment, and we were talking about, I said, do you remember those times when I was really angry? And she said, yeah. And I said to her, what did you make that mean at the time? And she said, I thought you were angry at me. I thought it was me. It was my fault, because at the time I didn't share it with her.
Yeah.
I just was doing it. So what happened was that, I didn't yell as much. I didn't get upset. I stopped trying to control everything as much. And so the kids felt less controlled and more independent. And we were able to have more fun. We were able to be more playful, like those things that are really important in all relationships. So the kids are beautiful. I feel really blessed to have them. We had just spent a weekend away with them at a wedding, and they just make me laugh. And they're just beautiful humans. And it's not always easy. And still there's times when, we have to have some conversations about behaviour or, but there's a real respect for each other, and I suppose a real connection. And that's the most important thing, is that I've protected the relationship rather than just being a parent.
And I guess that's such a change as well these days. It's that connection, and, as you were saying earlier, of like the bigger one and the little person, but actually creating those connections, that open and honesty about what's going on, and, how you're feeling, but even, sometimes in the world and the external environment, that taking them along for the ride can actually be quite powerful in that journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really powerful. And I think we can't do it on our own. We need to share honestly. We're human. We are going to get it wrong. We're going to have moments where we react and where we are not our best selves. And so we need to, be open to sharing that. So, because what it does is it gives our children permission to share too. So when they come home, like you mentioned, your son came home and he didn't even know what his reaction was until you kind of unpacked it. So what we do when we share, that we're having a bad day or that we're feeling overwhelmed or stressed, is that we give our children permission to share too. So they know that they can have a bad day at school and come home and maybe their behavior is not ideal, but that's okay. You'll notice what's happening in their behavior, and you'll be curious about what need this behaviour's meeting. Do they want more connection? Do they need some space? You'll be curious about it. And so then we allow them to kind of work through it, but we're there to catch them, and we're there to support them in whatever way they need. And sometimes they don't need us to help them with problems. Sometimes they just need us to be there, just to be connected, just to be alongside and know that they're loved no matter what.
100%. And what's it like for couples to also get on the same page for this approach as well? Because sometimes there might be one parent that is like, this is a great way of doing it. One may be a little bit more maybe traditional, of, had that a more traditional way of growing up, but may not necessarily realize that there are new ways and new opportunities of thinking. How important is it then for both parents to be on the same page, no matter if they live together or they're in, separate households?
Yeah, it's a gret question. Parents will always parent differently because they're different people and they've had different upbringings. So if we think about, two parents have had completely different upbringings, and you may or may not have had conversations with each other about what it was like when you were growing up. Sometimes it's good to have conversations about, what were the things, when were the times that you felt upset by your parents or hurt by your parents? Having conversations about this can really help people to open up and think about, well, I wonder what my child's experiencing now that they're, from us. So do we want to do it differently? Do we want to do it the same? So I think, again, or even when there is an upset or a hurt or there's anger, to just be really curious about what else is going on. What else does this remind you of a time, an older time when maybe you weren't listened to, or you were hurt, or you were dismissed? Because I've heard this, that this is not only just about the moment, but about something bigger than this moment. So am I responding to the child in front of me, or am I reacting to the child within me? It's a good question to kind of think about for couples, because often when couples are fighting or couples have moments where they, lose it with each other, those moments are also when, there's often a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old in the room, rather than as in the inner child.
Yeah.
Rather than the adult in the room.
I've heard that analogy as well about the 8-year-old child and how we grow up, but also that it's such, as I was saying earlier, like the younger years are just so influential on who we are as adults, and that can actually have such a big impact on the way that we show up as parents, and even sometimes down to how caring and empathetic and things like that we are, because also what we've been seen role modeled, but also what we've even seen from our own parents as well.
And children are meaning-making machines, like we all are. We're all humans. We see something and we make meaning out of it, and children do that too. So, the bit about not telling them what's happening, they're already making meaning of it. Like my daughter, I'm angry. She's making it about her, but it's nothing to do with her. So we have to kind of really think about and be curious about what are our children experiencing in the moment.
Yeah, because sometimes it's really got nothing to do with them, but as you're saying all throughout this, sometimes it's our own behaviour and our own needs, but then it's then being, I guess, portrayed onto others as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, like, what I could keep talking about this all day, because I know it's such a big topic, and as you were saying at the start, women are feeling just so overwhelmed with where everything is at the moment, even, cost of living, childcare, trying to go back to work. There's so many different elements, but also at times there are many women, myself included, where my mum didn't work a lot when I was a child. So I didn't have that role model, so to speak, of, hey, this is what it's going to be. And she was able to probably be a little bit there more emotionally at times than what we were. So for those women today, the busy working mums that are trying to juggle it all, what would you like to say to her, and any tips or strategies to helping her cope, particularly in the heat of those?
I want to say that you're doing a great job already. Like raising children is really tricky and hard at times. It's also beautiful and joyful and one of the best things that we can do. And work gives women so many other things too, like connection, like that sense of feeling valued, and having a career is really important as well. So can we do it all and have it be perfect? No, the answer is no, we can't. So having, just checking your expectations of yourself and checking, what's really important in this moment, because the moments through parenting change so much. There's times when you really need it as a parent to be really present in those early years emotionally. And then there's times where it's kind of they're a little bit more independent, and then, there's other things happening. So just remembering that it's always fluid, it's always changing, that this moment might feel really hard and you might feel really stuck in this moment, but it will change and it will alter. And I think one of the best things is to just have compassion for yourself and know that, you're already doing an incredible job, and that the most important thing is not really doing more. It's actually who you're being, and it's about being more present, more curious, more compassionate with yourself. And that in the end, really, the aim of the game in all of this is that, are we loved? Do we feel loved? And so really, thinking about what are the moments that make me feel really loved? What are the moments that I want to create? And, often with parenting and with families, we just kind of go along. We don't really design what we want. Like we look for the perfect career and we, study and learn all about it. But parenting and families, not so much. So even thinking about, if I wanted to create, my family, what do I want? And if I want, strong, positive, caring, loving relationships, then how do I need to be present and in relationship with my kids so that they experience that from me, and then also give that back in return?
And so it's really important, as you're saying, to have that probably added today, pause and reflect on, how you're showing up. As you're saying, what are your heartprint moments? That there might be some times that you go, that was a heartprint, even documenting it maybe, of going, okay, this is how we're feeling and that, but also what your values are. So then you can also then help set your boundaries is then also really important. So if you're thinking, oh my goodness, how can I do this? Have a quiet coffee and to pause and reflect. What do you think, Lisa?
Oh yeah, I think, and grab the book. I mean, there's heaps of questions in there. There's heaps of I use some stories from my own life and children and family, but also there's some beautiful stories in there from clients and others that have helped to shape the book so that you get a really good sense of this is what it looks like in action as well. And here are some reflection questions and some other tips and tools that you can use, as you navigate through all of this.
That's certainly important. So out of today, is there anything else that you would like to, I guess, say, or any hints, tips, or anything like that for working mums?
I think we kind of maybe haven't talked really about repairing and just knowing that in the moments when things are really tough and maybe you've said something wrong, that it's really important to repair, because what it shows children is that we're human, and that repair doesn't just look like, well, sorry about that. It looks like, something really important, so that we acknowledge really what's happened in the moment. So things like, I snapped at you and I apologize, and own your part of it. I was feeling overwhelmed, or, I took it out on you, and then really connecting with empathy with your child. I imagine it might have felt really frightening for you to hear me yell like that. So children know that you know how it felt, and then that we commit to doing it differently, and that we share with them, I'm going to try next time that I won't speak like that I'll take a breath, and then I might walk outside for a moment and come back. So I think repair is really important. It's probably one thing that I'd really love people to think about. Not just thinking about the repair, but how you do the repair is really important.
What's so important about the repair of how you do it? Because I've heard repair is almost more important than many other elements as well. So what's a good way to actually do that repair, as you say?
So those four kind of tips that I talked about, that's really important. We want children to feel the honesty and the realness of your repair, so that they know that it's come from your heart, not just because you felt bad in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But what it teaches children is that when they stuff up, when they say things, that hurt you, that they'll come and repair it too, or that they'll repair with their friends or their, siblings even.
Yeah, we can hope for the sibling component.
Yeah. But I really hope, I hope that people listen to this and think that if I simply start with some awareness, that's enough. If I'm just aware of, in this moment, there's something really big happening for me. And that kind of key question, am I responding to the child in front of me, or am I reacting to the child within me, is kind of one kind of key sort of moment to really think about what is this really about.
And I also liked how you often said it's not necessarily about the behaviour, but also the need that you had. So I think that's also a powerful, I guess, reframe at times.
Yeah. And parents have every right to get their needs met too. We're human. We're not gods. We're not, some unearthly being. We are human, and we'll get it wrong. But how we comfort and repair with ourselves, I think, is really important. So knowing that, in the moment you may not have said or done the right things, but, you can do better. You can always do better. And as long as you're kind to yourself, and I think kindness goes a long way in families. So kindness with yourself, but also with each other.
We're always improving. I guess we're never going to have it perfect. If we just have got the mindset that we keep going, we will get there and obviously improve and learn from each circumstance. So have that growth mindset behind it, which is so important. So thank you so much, Lisa. Just quickly, what do you do for self-care and look after yourself?
We live near the beach, so I walk every morning on the beach, and I love going when the stars are still up, because I don't know, there's something really special, and I don't know, I just have this moment where and this is really important, a moment where I'm not actually thinking about anything. I don't listen to podcasts in the morning or anything. I don't listen to the radio. I'm just actually not really thinking about anything. And when something big comes in or something comes in that might be a worry, I actually just push it away and I just actually focus on what's in front of me, like the beach or a leaf or, the stars or something, so that there is a moment where I'm actually not filled with, I've got to do X, Y, and Z. So yeah, that's my big self-care.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for today. Now, where can people connect with you and also find out more about the book?
Yes, so Strengthening Families Australia is my website. I'm on Instagram, so lisataylor.au, and Facebook, Lisa Taylor as well. And the book is available through Amber Press, through Amazon, Booktopia. So just Google that online. It's called The Perfect Parent Trap. And yeah, it's available now.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for today's chat. I'm sure that'll resonate with many people. I know personally as well, it's resonated quite strongly with myself. So thank you so much for today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and also just for the amazing work that you're doing in bringing all these, great stories and, helping people to feel normal in what's a really tricky space. So thank you to you.
My pleasure. Thank you.